Well, hey, welcome to the Pursue One podcast, your home for learning to pursue what matters most. Hey, do me a big favor, whether you're watching this podcast on YouTube, listening to it on Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, or Apple, or wherever you listen to this podcast, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Also, leave a review. It just helps people find our content faster and quicker. It'd be a big help if you would do that. On today's podcast, we're joined by Ralph Reynolds. Ralph is a mega big buck killer. He's killed an incredible amount of mature bucks all over the place. And so Ralph gets into some great detail about the strategies and the tips that he uses to target nocturnal large bucks. And so I believe you're going to love this podcast. Before we head over to the podcast, let's head over to the Pursue One crew.
Hey, this is Jeff Michael here with Pursue One Outdoors podcast. Got a room full tonight. Got our regular guest with us, Matt Farrar, and Colton Bailey's been here a couple times in our podcast, and then our tracking man, Ron Slifer, is here as well. We're excited. It is fall approaching. We've got a big banquet coming up here at Christchurch, a sportsman's banquet. Jeff Danker's coming in. Ron's going to speak. Don Higgins is going to be here. Brittany Gill's going to do some stuff.
I think it's pretty Jill, though.
Jill.
Yeah. She's killed a bigger deer than me.
She will never post my stuff if I call her.
Probably not.
I need to get that right. So she killed a bigger deer than me, too. We're excited about that. But Colton here, he's got the best thing going on.
It looks intense.
His arm is gnawed up.
Are we on video?
Yeah, we're on video. So kind of lift that thing up if you're watching it.
It's kind of embarrassing. But
what happened?
No, it's not embarrassing. That's a manly story.
Jeez.
Had a lot of weird looks today.
60-pound catfish, right?
Yep.
What kind of catfish?
Flathead.
Flat.
Where were you at?
You can't tell
tell you that.
Oh, okay. All right.
In the water.
In the water.
I didn't know. Like, you ask a guy where he hunts at, he's like in the woods. I didn't know that catfish were the same way.
Well, 60 pounds.
Yeah,
It was actually 56, like 0.7, but
good grief.
it or maybe it's 55.7. I don't know. It was big either way, but yeah, it got me good.
Tell us how you do that real quick, because there is no way. I just can't imagine reaching into a hole until the fish bites me on the arm.
So this time of year, I guess it's kind of the spawn or the fish. They start laying eggs, and bigger the hole, hold a bigger fish, obviously. But they find wherever they can lay their eggs, and there'll be two fish in there sometimes spawning and whatnot. But they don't want to leave that hole, so you're reaching in there, disturbing them, and they come to bite you, and you try to hold on for dear life and pull them out.
What's it feel like?
It doesn't really hurt. It's more of a
That
adrenaline
looks like a
rush, and
belt
it scares
sander
you.
gone
But
to your arm.
Yes, that really does. Like,
It really does.
this hurts. Usually you try to grab them. They got a nice little ridge on the bottom of their lip, and you can get your fingers under there and hold on. But with this fish particular,
There's the popping.
there's that popping. I reached in the hole and I didn't feel it, and then I turned my left, and with it being 60 pounds, it's a big mouth, and it got up high, and I just knew it was big, so I was trying to hold on anything I could, and then he started barrel rolling, and then it just.
yeah, I heard those blue cats will do that. They'll like spin. They like to do that.
Those blue
Goodness
cats.
gracious.
The blue cats are really mean. I've never ran into a
You
big
call
one
it
of
a
those, but-
hogging.
Yep.
Yeah, we just discussing what's the name of this stuff.
And
I've heard it
yeah.
called noodling.
And I think Brittany Jill done that here a while back.
Yeah, I
she
saw
just
her. I
saw
saw her
that on
post a-
Facebook or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so how deep of water was you in when you got this one?
This was probably only 4 foot,
Yeah.
and that's about how I don't like swimming down real
But
far.
you're in his element there.
Yeah.
You know,
For
you're
real.
at his mercy. Wow.
And
So
it'll-
do they have like two holes? Are they like an escape route, or is it the only way out?
it all depends. Sometimes
Okay.
it's rocks stacked on each other, so there'll be 4 or 5 holes, and once you know a fish is in there, you back out. You try to get however many people you have. You try to get them around there and start plugging holes, and then the biggest hole.
And the unlucky
will go in
guy
there.
draws the short straw, has to
real.
reach in. Yeah.
I just can't imagine.
So
No.
anything other than a fish before, but
No, I mean when we're up in the rocks, I run into snakes a lot.
yeah.
But they're just kind of up on the rocks. I've never been in a hole or anything, but snakes don't bother me. So sometimes if a guy that we're with sees a snake, he's done for the day. But
Yeah, so I'm feeding my fish this morning in my pond. And I've got some rocks that I stand up
Kind
on.
of like the same thing in Noodling.
Yeah, it's similar. And I feed my catfish. They're not 60 pounds yet. But there's a snake swimming around and tried to crawl up on the rock I was on. I freaked out. I can't do it. No way I could do that, but good for you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, myself, my excitement is I'm getting ready in about 2 weeks, guys, to go to the Haul Road in Alaska. I'm going to go with my son and a friend of his, and we're going to go up the Haul Road all the way to Prudhoe Bay, which is as far north in Alaska as you can go, and we're going to hunt the corridor along the Haul Road for caribou with the bow and arrow. So I can't wait.
You've been shooting?
I've been shooting. I'm trying. I see, here in the Midwest, 30 yards is really, I felt like I never really needed to be proficient past that. And they're telling me I need to be able to shoot 60. So I've really been struggling to extend my range, and I'm shooting more than I've shot in years.
Well, FYI, I do have a mileage limitation. I don't drive that far if you need a tractor, okay?
But it's Alaska run. You may want to, huh?
I know. It'd be nice to see.
I wonder if you could track in Alaska. I wonder if that's legal.
And I wonder what your dog would do if there's a bear at the end of the track.
Well, we did track a bear in New Hampshire a few years ago. We actually tracked a bear that was shot with a bow, and we never found it. It was shot kind of low and stuff, but he tracked it. I didn't know what to expect because there's no bear around here. We've never tracked bear, but we put him on where the bear was shot, where there was blood, and he actually picked up the track and went with it.
The concern with this is it's grizzlies.
Yeah, I don't want to mess with them.
It's grizzly season like the week before we get there, so hopefully they'll be pushed back. Yeah,
For real. Colton, you got any cameras out?
I haven't been. I'm way behind the 8 ball.
That's very much unlike you.
It's life with a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Work's busy,
Kids.
baby.
Yeah.
I've got all the batteries and SD cards updated, so baby steps.
Progress.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, Jeff and I went today and bought guns for our sportsman's banquet.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
That's going to be pretty fun. We were able to pick out five different guns. We've got shotgun, primarily a slug gun. We got a pistol, a rifle. We've got an AR platform. Just kind of a little diverse options for guys to pick from. Hopefully, we'll be able to give away at least 10, 2 of each of those. Maybe if we sell out, we're getting close to being able to do 3 of each of those. So
Awesome.
Be fun.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you have not bought a ticket, head over to our social and grab a ticket. They're going pretty fast. We're selling them as we're recording. I'm getting notifications that we're selling them. So.
And people need to know, too, that when they buy a ticket, that's entrance, it's the meal, it's all the speakers. There's 4 speakers that night, like I mentioned a little while ago. And then that's in all the drawings that we do. I think they're going to provide $1,000 worth of accessories, 9mm rounds or whatever they're going to put together at Accuracy Firearms, a package for us. But the ticket, we don't sell raffle tickets on top of the ticket. It's just that ticket puts you in entry for everything. So,
and what's the meal? Did we fish again this year?
We're not doing fish. We're doing about an inch thick smoked pork chop. Mm-hmm. There's some vegetables and other junk to go with it, but it's a pork chop.
Other junk?
So you're not leaving here on an empty belly. You're getting something for the person, the ticket. You're getting something out of it.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if you guys ever followed Jeff Danker. Good stuff. Ron's got some. He keeps telling me some stuff that
unreleased footage and pictures.
And
it's something that he would get in trouble with sharing on YouTube.
Probably so. Well, they definitely block it on Facebook. It would be blocked.
Oh, blood.
So
absolutely.
Okay.
But
it is educational. It's really interesting. That's what's neat. There's just so many variables to when you shoot a deer or what happens after you shoot a deer. But I got documentation here to prove it.
Well, and you were telling me a little bit about one of the things is about shot ethics.
Oh yeah.
And the rationale behind the choices that we make when we decide to harvest an animal, and the respect that we need to have for that animal. Sometimes it means just you got to pass.
Yeah, and that's tough to do. I get it. I was a bow hunter for many years too, and it's just that opportunity time usually comes at low light. And that's if you can't see the animal, don't shoot at it.
That's kind of where I'm at on this caribou thing. If I don't get better, if I don't have more confidence, I'm not going. If I come back without a caribou because I couldn't get close enough, then that'll be all right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you do. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, today on the podcast, we're joined by Ralph Reynolds. Ralph is the owner, Prairie Land Outfitters in Kansas, and he's going to give us a really cool rundown of some of his strategy. I don't want to take too much of his thunder. Strategies on killing big whitetail. That's what he's done his whole life. So
yeah. Going to be some good stuff.
Yeah, let's get to it.
All right. Hey, this is Pursue One Outdoors, and we're here tonight with Ron Slifer and Colton Bailey and Matt Farrar. We've got a special guest with us tonight. Ralph Reynolds is going to be sharing with us some strategy. This man has succeeded. He's not just given principles of stuff he hasn't done. This man has succeeded in taking, Ralph, what, 4 200-inch bucks?
Yeah, I've killed 4 over 200, and I guess probably the better, or I don't know if it's better or not, but I think I've killed 9 over 180.
Wow.
In the
Wow.
20.
So
I guess that's in the last 19 years, something like that. Kind of when I really got bit with the, when I finally got where I could keep from shooting 150-inch deer,
Yeah, I'm not there yet. So
wow.
just
It's a pretty big learning curve. Killing big deer sucks 99% of the time, or hunting big deer sucks 99% of the time.
Yeah.
So, but
where do you live, Ralph?
I live in central Missouri, kind of south central, which is far from the deer hunting mecca. Missouri is a pretty good state, but most of the really good hunting is north of the river and stuff. And of course, I'm good friends with Chris Lanauer, and Chris, you done a podcast with him on Bigley,
Yep.
which, that deer he killed, that's, to kill a deer that size, not just in the county Chris lives in, you can take several miles around, several counties around here that, that deer is just a freak, to kill that big a deer.
That deer's a giant anywhere.
Oh,
Yeah.
That was incredible.
Such a big typical frame. He's not a 150-inch deer with, 50 inches of stickers. He's got that huge typical frame. And I guess he was actually bigger the year before, So,
Yeah.
but,
Well, Ralph, when you and I were talking, you were telling me that you kind of give Chris a little trouble with your North American whitetail article, and as well as you being on the cover.
Yeah. Chris, me and him both have kind of a little different sense of humor. We're a little dry, but it's still, we have a good time with it and stuff. But I killed one and that was, really kind of the start of when that was in 2000. I found this deer in Kansas, and he was just like a friend of mine when I first found him. And I guess you still can, but back in the day, then that was before. I'm sure there was trail cameras, but you didn't run a lot of cameras. I didn't anyway. They were expensive, and I think then I'm not for sure. But I think then you still had to take your film they were film cameras,
Wow.
And
It would have been expensive.
Yeah, well, you go to Walmart and get 50 pictures, but you only had to pay for the ones you wanted, and then they finally figured out that you was throwing away all the doe pictures and $5 pictures.
Yeah.
And then get another roll of film, and the cameras weren't real good and stuff. But I found this deer just through scouting, and actually found him. It's still maybe it was legal to spotlight in Kansas. And I used to do that a lot when I first started hunting out there. Of course, not with a gun or anything, but
That's one way to kill a nocturnal buck.
That's right.
How
to kill nocturnal deer at night.
Yeah, the ones that are really nocturnal, you can work on them with a spotlight and but anyway, that's how I found this deer. I would spotlight the area that back then, there wasn't much leasing or anything, and you could get permission pretty easily. And I hunted that early muzzleloader season, and I found this deer, and I just knew that he was really big, because I actually got lucky, just roll up on him real close to the road, him and 4 or 5 other bucks, and like I described him, a buddy of mine asked me, he goes, "How big is he?" I said, "He's big enough that he don't look real." Wow. I said, "I don't know how big he is, but he doesn't look real." He literally didn't. I was just like, I just can't believe a deer would have that big of, because he's real super wide and real heavy all the way out into his beams and stuff. And so I just stayed on him, I drove to Kansas, I think every weekend. And I found him I think he was in velvet, but fully developed, probably mid-August. I don't remember exactly. But I drove out there pretty much every weekend. I'd get off work on Friday night, drive out there. and just trying to keep track of him, because I had an early muzzleloader tag, and that opened generally around 10th, 12th, something, whatever Saturday, however that fell in September, So, but anyway, ended up keeping track of him and kind of lost him. And then there was my cousin, I got some family that lives out there, and some guy was hauling alfalfa hay. They bale a lot of that at night. And he was on Shannon Creek Road, and said this deer jumped in the road in front of him. So I'd lost him for a couple of weeks. Landon hadn't seen him or anything. And Landon just overheard the guy talking about this deer, walked out in the road, and he said he was 3 foot wide. And I was like, well, it's got to be that deer. He wasn't 3 foot wide, but he was 28, and I had him officially scored just because of the magazine article. Gordon Whittington said that, they like to have an official score on him, so nobody calls BS on you and stuff, and he was really wide. He's 28 and 2/8 on the inside.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
And
Crazy.
Yeah, actually take an outside measurement on him when you have him scored, and he was 32 and something on the outside. So he
almost
really
3 feet.
Yeah, when the guy said he was 3 foot wide, he really wasn't too far off. But
Man.
But he ended up killing that deer. The story was a North American whitetail. It's kind of a long story, but he ended up killing him, and that was kind of
Back when was that?
That was in 2000.
Okay.
And
I'll see if I can find the article posted below.
Yeah. It was on the cover of North American Whitetail, and a buddy of mine took the pictures at the time. And pictures do a lot, but this was with a film camera and everything, and they turned out really, really good, and then and I knew Mark Drury pretty well then, and Mark took some pictures of it and stuff and wanted to see the deer and everything, and then Mark knew Gordon, and I had no intentions of trying to put it in a magazine or anything. I didn't know, I knew it was big, and I had scored him myself, me and my cousin. We kind of come up with, like a 212 or 13-inch gross, and I didn't really know if that was right or not, but that's what we come up with. And and then it ended up, Mark got a hold of Gordon, and Gordon got a hold of me. And long story short, it was in a magazine, and it ended up being on the cover, which was really, really cool.
Pretty special.
Yeah.
Got to have that, it's kind of like
You've done 4 that big?
No, well, that's actually the biggest deer I've ever. That's the biggest, highest grossing deer. He actually, I think he was kind of the guy that scored him said, this is a pretty unique deer. He'll actually net Boone and Crockett both ways. He nets, and these numbers, I'd have to look at a score sheet, and I just had him scored, and I never even, I wasn't really that worried about it, what he scored. I just kind of done it because, the article, but I think he nets 202 or 203 non-typical, and then he nets 181 or 183. I can't remember typically. So he would make Boone and Crockett either way. But I had the guy that scored him. He said, "Well, do you want to do him as a typical?" And he looks typical, but he's got some trash on him. He's got double drop tines, which one is not very big, and the other one's only like 4 or 5 inches long. And he injured one of his main beams. It's kind of got a crab claw looking thing on the end of it, but he's a real cool looking deer. Got big long tines, like his 2s and 3s are, I don't remember, 13 inches long or something like that, and just a big old frame. And he gets heavier as he goes out. He's actually like between his, I guess he's a mainframe 6x6. And I guess between his G4 and G5, and then even between his 5 and the end of his main beam, which doesn't count in the score because you only get the first 4 mass measurements. But I think he's like 6 inches, right at 6 out there, on both sides. So and when he turns, he kind of splays out. So like whenever I seen him that night, the first time I seen him, you got to imagine in a spotlight looking through binoculars at about 100 yards, he's walking straight away from me. And he just looked like, it was, I never seen a deer like that. I seen some big deer, but nothing like that.
How many times did you see him while hunting him?
I killed him first day. Actually, first time I went in there, I killed him.
Wow.
So, which was probably a good thing.
Yeah.
They say
I shot him
always the
in,
best.
Yeah, shot
First
him
time in.
Yeah, he was quartered away real hard when I shot him, and you'd have to read the article. It's kind of a long story, but I shot him and then left him go and went back the next morning. Ended up having to shoot him again. Walked up on him in his bed and ended up shooting him again. But
Ron over here would be proud of you because he likes to tell hunters that dead deer don't move. So get out of there and let them.
Oh, yeah,
die.
I'm a big proponent if I don't, since I'm in the outfitting business, I take a lot of guys deer hunting, and if how many times I've had guys tell me, I hit him, where'd you hit him on this deer? I hit him right behind the shoulder, right there. I'm like,
Hear it a lot.
yeah, but he ran over and stood there for 15 minutes and then turned around and walked off. I'm like, you didn't hit him right there.
That's where you were aiming, but not where you hit.
Big difference.
Yeah, in your little mind, you may think that's where you hit him, but you didn't. You shot him in the liver, the guts, or something, but yeah, that's why I said if they, like Ron says, if they're dead, they don't. They can get a lot more alive if you get after them.
Yep.
But if they're dead, they're not going anywhere.
And I've noted that too about nighttime. When you go at night, you're really limited on your vision anyway. And most guys are probably looking at the ground for that blood, with flashlights. And then the meantime, the deer sees you coming, and you don't realize it because it's dark out.
Mm-hmm.
He just leapfrogs on you. You're just inadvertently pushing him.
Oh yeah, a lot of people. Yeah, they have no idea that you. And, whenever I started doing that, of course, when you're a kid, you shoot them, you're out of your tree and after them like a bloodhound, and you just lost them, and all your buddies, I remember when when I first started bow hunting and all my buddies bow hunting and stuff, I mean, it was like a 50-50 deal. It seemed like if we found a deer, I mean, we just after them and jumping them and running them. And, of course you didn't have the great big broadheads like you got now and stuff. And, there's no doubt them big broadheads, they just kill a lot better and stuff than, the inch cut, Zoowickis and stuff like that. And, bear heads and everything. So, but, so that was kind of but when I killed that deer, and then that year I killed 4, I killed 2 that were just one of them was 160 and one of them was like 161 or 62. And then I killed another one in Missouri that was like 150. So I killed 4 big ones that year. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like, that kind of really pushed me over kind of pushed me towards really wanting to hunt big deer, Now it was, a few more years before I, got over the wanting to shoot 150s and stuff, and I'd killed some other deer before that. I killed a lot of deer that was nice, and you kind of kill what you got, like where I grew up at, 150-inch deer was a giant, so you're kind of limited to what you kill to what you have to hunt. You're not going to kill 200s if they're not there. I don't care how good a hunter you are, so.
Yeah.
And so and then 2, I was hunting Kansas, and I'd been hunting Illinois a few years and stuff. And I was just like, I've kind of figured, and, in Iowa occasionally when you'd get a tag and stuff. And then I kind of changed to the thing where, you can't try to hunt 4 states every year. And you got to kind of pick a spot and kind of concentrate on that. And I kind of fell into the outfitting business, about, not too long after that. And so that was in Kansas. So I just kind of made Kansas my big deer spot, that I was going to, and I've killed some in Missouri since then, and in Iowa, and I haven't hunted Illinois in several years, but,
there are no big deer here.
Yeah, the world record buck was killed.
I tell you what, when I quit hunting Illinois, there wasn't many left. They had them killed down pretty good, But if you wasn't in an area that was managed really good, So
how much land do you have access to, controlled over right now that you're hunting?
In Kansas, I lease. I don't know exactly, but it's 11,000 acres, 12 something. I don't know. I'd have to sit down and add it up. But
that's with your outfit business, right? That's not just your own spot. Okay.
Yeah, that's not my own personal. I have kind of an unwritten rule that I got one ranch that I lease a bunch of ground from this family, and I still take a few hunters on it, but but I don't hunt it. I don't know. They kind of, I don't know. It's kind of a little different deal. They don't want it like over hunted. I think they know that one of these days we're about to. They're a little bit young. I'm 59. They're in their 50s, and I think they know that one of these days that when they sell that or they retire, that it's probably going to be worth more as recreational property than cattle pasture. Mm-hmm. So that big piece, I keep that. That's the only place I really hunt. Now I have over the years, I've killed a couple, in just a spot here, a spot there, but it's actually the furthest piece I have from where I'm kind of based out of. And, I kind of keep most of that, that's the place where I hunt, and do most of my hunt when I don't get the hunt during the rut. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of a pre-rut, post-rut deer hunter, just because of, when you're in the outfitting business, it's, the month of November, especially up through Thanksgiving, is when you're the busiest, and so that doesn't afford me a lot of time to get in a tree,
So what time of year do you kill your deer then?
I kill them, biggest part of them, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but during the dog days of October. I think that's probably because the way I hunt and how I've kind of learned to kill them then. My big thing is, like, of course, you got to find a deer, but usually I got history, every year. Now I run, 35 trail cameras and not just on that farm, but all over. But on that farm, I run a good bit of trail cameras, and it's all just cattle pasture and not much timber, and no row crops at all on it. Now there's row crops not too far off of it, but none right on that farm. But so you got to find the big one first, and then you got to and the whole key, like I always say, like in October during them dog days, there's another guy from Ohio, that Adam Hayes. He kills a bunch of big deer. I think he's killed like 4 over 200. I've heard him talk about that I think he kills some of his deer in the same time period, and that when everybody else is like that, kind of the 15th through the I don't know, 25th or 6th or whenever it is,
So I'm gonna open up the can of worms. Where are you at with the moon? Like, did you play a lot of your strategy into the moon?
No, I mean, I think that moon thing does definitely have a bearing on it, but I think that weather trumps everything.
Yeah.
I don't care whether it's moon, what it is, weather trumps everything, and cold fronts are the key. And everybody, I don't want to make it sound like I think deer are stupid, but I think people give deer way more credit, not than they deserve, but I think people sometimes are too scared. They think they can't kill them unless they got their nose up a doe's butt. They think they can't kill them, and they're wrong. I think that's, if you're trying, because usually what I do is I'll have 1 or 2 target deer that I want to kill that I know is 5.5 or 6.5 or 7.5 years old. I'm almost to the point now of I'm getting like I used to be 4.5, then it's 5.5, and now the last few years I'm almost to the mindset of that they need to be 6.5 to reach their full potential. I just do. I see too many of them get still growing well into that 6.5, 7.5, and even 8.5, or maybe even older. So I don't. Not all of them. Small percentage, but a small percentage of them get big. There's not. Not every deer that's 5 or 6 years old is going to be, 180. Vast majority of them is going to be less than 150. I don't care what state you're in. But
you got to have the right genetics for wherever.
Yeah, genetics and age. That's the whole key. And Kansas has good genetics, fairly low deer density, and they have a post-rut rifle season. Mm-hmm. And that's the key. I don't care what anybody says. Post-rut rifle season is, or gun season.
Illinois lands gun season right on prime rut every year.
Man.
Yeah, but you only the good thing is the first one you only have 3 days. You don't have 13.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
You guys have 13 days.
Wow.
Yeah, I think in Missouri it opens on a Saturday and runs till
Yep, it does.
like through not the next Saturday, the Tuesday after that next Saturday or something. It's 12 days or something. Then it closes for like a week, and then we have doe season, and then it closes for another week, and then we have alternative weapon season for another 10 days or whatever it is, or I don't know, it might be the same amount, So it's they put a lot of pressure on them,
Ralph, something I was thinking of when you're talking mid-October. My experience is, and I don't have much compared to what you're talking about, but I've hunted a lot, just not been successful on these huge deer. But I've noticed first couple weeks of October a lot of movement, and then there's not a lot of movement. I always felt like they've gone nocturnal. They've gone, they're aware something's changing. They're prepping
gearing up for the rut.
Yeah. So are these deer nocturnal? Are you dealing with that issue?
Oh yeah, they're nocturnal. Well, all deer are nocturnal. I mean, that's their job. Their job is to move at night. Does drag their fawns out early because I think they probably. I don't know why they do it. They're definitely not stupider, but I think maybe it has something to do with the predators. Maybe they bring them babies out early to eat and stuff while it's daylight because it's not. Coyotes and stuff are not out as much then. I don't know why they do it, but every deer, a deer by nature, their job is to move at night. That's when they do 90% of their stuff. They sleep during the day and lay around and then they move at night. But in October, my biggest thing is when I get a deer and like if he's in a spot and I'm like, okay, I'm getting pictures of him right after dark or within an hour or something. So, or I'm getting pictures of him in the daylight in the morning. But how getting into them places in the morning is you booger them up too bad. So that tells me that deer's bedding pretty close to there. So half the battle to me is if I get in my stand whenever I get there and I climb in and I'm 90% sure, maybe even 99% sure that deer's bedded within a couple hundred yards of me, maybe 300. He's bedded pretty close. Now, the 7th of November, that sucker may be 5 miles from there. You don't know where he's at, what he's doing, been walking all night, might be on a doe locked up out in the middle of some prairie grass field, 5 miles from the nearest tree. So, but in October, in them dog days, they, like you said, early October, there's a little movement. I think they first few little cold, and you can kill them then too, but I think they are a little more active. And then they just kind of, like I say, they get into that lull where they're not doing anything. And they're real consistent on where they bed and what they do. You'll get them after dark pictures a lot, from that 15th through Halloween, whenever. And Kansas is a little different too. I think the rut in Kansas, I don't know why. I have no explanation for it, but I think it's 5, 6, 7 days later than it is biggest part of the rest of the Midwest. I know Mark Drury's always told me that. He said, if you're going to Kansas, you better go 5 days later and what you think it's going to be good in Iowa and Illinois, or a week later, and that's kind of true. So I have a little longer window there into that, late October and stuff. You're not seeing as much move. There's still pretty much homebodies in, they're still in that area and, pretty consistent. And, I just think
you're going mostly then, because you said mornings, you booger them up. You're evening hunting primarily?
Yeah, I pretty much hunt in the evenings. I killed a big one here a few years ago in the mornings, but it was just, it was a perfect scenario that I could get in there. I almost killed him the first morning, and he got away from me. It was I done something I never do. I blind grunted in a tree because it was the first time I had hunted in the morning, and I thought, man, I'd sure like to, I hadn't seen a deer. And I thought, and I knew this deer was in there. I had a bunch of pictures of him, and I thought, I'm just going to, and I grunted 3 or 4 times. And, I thought, well, I'll see something maybe. I can grunt a buck in or something, And I was sitting on this creek bed, and there's a shelf where there's like a high hill behind me, this prairie behind me. And there's a big trail along that, which I didn't know at the time. It was a new farm, actually. I just got this farm. And I could hear a deer walking. And I couldn't see him. I was like, where is that deer? Is close, and I kept looking. Then I looked up, and he's like above me, walking on this shelf, and it's him. And this deer was like 202, 203, big wacky rack thing, big handlebar stickers off both teeth, real cool looking deer, bunch of points, big mass and stuff. And he comes and he's like 50 yards, and he's just staring down in there. And I was like, damn, he come to that grunt call, and he can see everything in there, and
He's looking for you.
I don't know this deer or anything. It's a new farm. I don't know if he's 5 or if he's 8, but he's fully mature. He's big, thick neck, great big old bucket head, and stuff. And, and even from the pictures, I thought, well, he's at least 5.5. He's probably might be 6 or 7, and he just wouldn't come in there, and I was, I'm sitting there kicking myself in the butt because I'm like, you just educated him. And, but it was a spot where I had another stand that was about 200 yards down the draw, and that's where he came from. And I thought, if he's coming from that, if I can get in that tree in the dark real early, I might have a chance to kill him. And, and there was a creek. I could get in that creek and walk all the way to that tree. In the bottom of that creek. And so that's what I did. I waded that creek all the way up there, slipped up in that tree. And about 45 minutes after daylight, he was coming down that draw. I'm assuming going to bed. And the funny thing about it was I grunted him right back to the base of my tree. And, after grunting at him, but the next day, but when he was walking down through there, it was one of them deals like, he wasn't going to come to me. He was walking a hillside, and I was in that creek bottom, and I thought, well, I got to do something to grunt at it. And so I grunted, I got one of them buck roar things, it's real loud. And like the first time, he's walking, dragging his feet in them leaves, and making a bunch of noise. And I grunted, he didn't hear me. Then I got on it pretty hard the next time, and he heard me. And you can kind of tell if you've hunted enough and seen enough deer. Like as soon as he heard that, I remember thinking he's going to come. You could just tell that it pissed him off. And he stood there and stared and stared and stared. But there was like a little short ridge between us. And I thought, well, you can't see in here this time, you're going to have to come down here and look. And so I thought, well, I'll wait till he starts walking again, and then I'll grunt at him again. And as soon as he took off walking, I give him, one of them real long grunts like that. And he swapped ends, and every hair on him stood up. And the whole way off that hill, he come down through there with his head turned sideways, running his tongue in and out of his nose, and of course started going down, trying to get downwind of me. But luckily that creek, there was a big bur oak tree when it flooded, had fell in that creek, and he couldn't get downwind of me. He had to come up the bank and then walk the bank to get downwind of me. And when he come up that bank, he was 20 yards from me. So, perfect. So that was, that was my only big buck in the morning story. So.
Wow. Do you normally call like that?
I hardly ever blind call unless I've got my back against something where they can't get downwind of me. I just don't very much. I'll call to a deer, if I can see him, and then you can kind of play off of how he reacts,
right.
But like that, the morning before when I kind of messed him up, I was just, you're sitting up there. It's the first morning you hunted. It's 25 degrees. There's frost on the ground, and you got all these, you're going to see all these deer or see this deer and that deer. And there was a couple other, big deer in there, nice deer, and I thought, man, I can't believe I ain't seen a deer. It's just a perfect morning, high pressure, you could blow your breath out and everything just went straight up, and I'm like, man, and I thought, I bet if I grunt, there'll be some kind of buck come walking in here, And of course it's him. And then, he was, he was a little smarter than like he wasn't, like a 3-year-old run up underneath your tree, but the next morning, I think he had a big inside point on one side and it was fresh broke off. So I don't know if like that morning he'd just been in a big fight or something. And, when I grunted at him, it just hit him wrong, and he was just like, because I mean, he was on a mission that day. The morning I killed him. And, but deer, I don't think they, I kind of think they're like a dog. I think they kind of forget from one day to the next what happened. I don't think he went, well, I heard that grunt call yesterday and I walked up there and I couldn't see a buck, so I'm not going down there. I don't think they have that thought process. I mean, maybe they do. I don't know, but I don't think.
You mentioned, you talked about walking up a creek to get to the stand. How important is planning your access? Do you put a big emphasis on that?
Yeah, access is a big deal. Exit's the most is my, because when you're entering a place, I've got one spot that I've killed in the last 12 years. I've killed 4 deer out of there. All of them are over 170, and a couple of them over 180. One of them over 180, one of them over 190. So it's a good spot, and.
Could you send us a pin?
Yeah.
On Google.
Actually, it's one of them things. Whenever I went in there and looked at this place, because I knew on that end of that ramp I wanted to get it. And when I walked up there's a little patch of cedars, and there's one oak tree in it, and there's like 3 boards nailed in it. And there probably has been in there since I was a baby.
Right. It's always been a good spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, and I mean, really, that's something a lot of guys. I mean, I pay a lot of attention to. I mean, when you see that, I mean, like whenever I seen that, my confidence level went from like 50% to like 100%. This is a spot, because some old dude that before the day of scent blocker, ozonics, all that stuff, he thought that was the spot to hunt, and so it is, I mean, but that place I can climb up this bluff. And it's steeper than hell, I mean, it's hard to get up, and it's really hard to get up if it's wet, or get down it in the dark. It's all growed up and everything. But you can slip up there and just slide right in. I hung a stand there first, and then I ended up putting a shadow hunter blind in there, backed it in that cedar, cut it out, and backed it in there on a trailer. And I mean, it's just looks. I mean, you would notice it if you walk by there, but I mean, I put it up and like the next day, in Kansas, it's legal to bait, in that country there on that farm, it's not conducive to food plots at all. It's real rocky, big cattle pasture. I know everybody's like, oh, well, you bait, I'm like, well, it's legal. So I bait,
Mm-hmm.
To me,
there's a lot of, I don't know, people who freak out about that stuff.
I have 12 acres of food plots. What is that?
Yeah,
that's true.
Like, all right, and I run free choice feeders, and and I feed them all, not all year round, but I feed them all the way up into February or March. But I said, what is the difference? I put up a feeder. I can't plant corn there or anything. I put up a feeder and I keep it full of corn, and I'll hand feed on the ground and everything. Deer eat it. Or you live in Iowa where it's illegal to bait. You plant 20 acres of corn, you combine 10 of it. The other 10, you brush hog an acre patch off. You put your blind into the corn where the wind blows out over it. And every 3 weeks, you brush hog 5 more rows off and hunt over it. Mm-hmm. I mean, whenever them guys, and I'm not, I think them guys, like Don Kiske, I've known Don for years. He's as good as deer hunter as there is. But them deer that stand out there with a whole cob of corn in their mouth, that's not cut corn.
It's pretty similar.
And the large majority of people that complain about baiting states.
It's legal. Yeah. It's a legal version of baiting, but it's no different. It's all the same. Yeah. And, I mean, if you leave 20 acres of standing beans and you got a shooting house in the middle of it and you kill them with a muzzleloader. I mean, all of them guys that kill all them big deer, that's all. It's all about the food and how and they're smart. That's the way to do it, But like where I hunt at, I don't have. I mean, I got some crop ground and stuff, but most of it is big cattle pasture, and that's where my biggest deer are, is in them prairies and stuff, Mm-hmm. And if you don't feed, you're not going to kill much, I mean, you're just not, I mean, it's like having a food plot. It's a destination for them to come to, and and you got it, but there's an art to it. I mean, you can't just, a lot of people think, oh, you just go out there and dump 200 pounds of corn on the ground, 180-inch deer's going to walk in there and eat out. Well, I'm telling you, that don't happen like that very often. So it's a little different now. But when you the upside to that is when you set your spot up, you talked about the entrance and the exit and stuff. You can manipulate that a little bit because that feeder's mobile. Some places you can't. You don't have and that's why now I think these shooting houses, as you see, these shooting houses are the death of so many big deer, because what it has done is it's allowed you to hunt the spot, not the tree.
Yeah.
You
Makes
can put
sense.
that thing wherever it needs to be, and deer are numb to them. They pay no attention to them.
Yeah, and
It's
I don't know.
unbelievable.
I don't know what your thought is on this, and maybe you guys can weigh in on this. Do you think that those blinds allow you to close them shut, and keep your scent in them?
Yeah, scent control.
I think with an ozonics and stuff, it's good. I don't know if I put a percentage, if it's
Yeah.
80%, 70%. But I tell you this, if I'm hunting a really, really big deer and I got a shadow hunter there and an ozonics, I can have one running out of, if I had two of them in there, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't hunt it on bad wind.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. And now I ain't saying if it was December 31st, the last day of season, and I had marginal wind or bad wind, I might go in there then, and I might try it. Nothing to lose. But and you may get away with it. And I've killed deer out of them. I think I told you, Matt, a story about the deer that I killed in another spot on that same ranch, and I had no choice. You can't set it up except for a south wind, and I was just completely wrong where that deer was bedding. I mean, he walked right up. I heard him walk in the grass right up behind that blind. And, of course, at the time, I hadn't seen a deer. And, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to get blown up. This deer's dead downwind of me. And, and I sat there for a few minutes and I never heard nothing. I thought, well, that's good. It just walked off. I didn't know buck, doe, what it was, and at least it didn't blow me up. And, I mean, it wasn't but just a few seconds, I heard him walking again. And, and I look out one of the windows, just kind of lean up to see what it is. And this deer he's a mainframe 6x6. He's like 23 inches wide on the inside, got a pretty big drop tine on one side and a big flyer off his two on the other side.
Ralph,
And
you're painting Kansas as like the place to hunt whitetails. Like I'm cruising through points on my phone later today.
Yeah. And this deer, I mean, he's like 100. I think he grossed 183 or something like that. But he's walking like, I mean, literally, I look out the window. Just looking out the window, I couldn't see him. I had to lean up and look over because I only had that window about halfway open, and they're vertical windows for shooting a bow out of. And he's walking like, I mean, literally 5 foot from that blind. And I mean, he was exact. I had ozonics running. I was clean, but I mean, I wasn't like, pristine, like, I mean, some guys I think get a little, because I think you're just kind of wasting your time on some of that. I know all that stuff is, people are trying to sell stuff, and I understand that, but it really don't work the way, how many times I hear these guys, I got this, this spray, and I sprayed all this, and I'm set, I'm good to go. Then you see their little video, and the first deer gets downwind of them, blows up, and runs off.
Well, they never show that on TV.
Yeah, once in a while or they're like, the deer just walks up there and turns around and walks off, and we're like, well, you get smelled, So, but yeah, I wouldn't, but I do think the shadow hunters, even a ground blind, I think is better than sitting on the side of a tree. But I think, I say shadow. I got a bunch of shadow hunters. That's why I call box blind shadow hunters. But, whether it's a muddy or a redneck or whatever, I think, they're all probably equally good as far as holding your scent in and stuff. But I think that, it definitely helps. I mean, like I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, you know, about this, and I said, "When's the last time you see Mark Drury kill a big deer out of a tree stand?"
That's true.
Well, it cuts down your movement too. You know, they're not going to see your movement either.
Yeah.
Like sitting in an open tree stand.
Yeah, I mean, you can set it. It's pretty relaxing hunting. You know, I'm getting old now, so I kind of like to take it easy. You know, you get in one of them chairs. You know,
Yeah.
I can't sleep though when I deer hunt. It's the only problem. I'm just one of them people. I can't sleep. You know, if I could sleep, it would be a lot more fun. You know, I could get a nap in. But you know, like I was talking about, you know, in Kansas, you know, like of course I can bait, so you know you can manipulate them spots, and I'm a big believer in. I think you'll kill more deer on a north wind if you can set architect, whether you're it's you know it's no different than food plot architecture. You hear Mark and Terry talk about food plot architecture all the time, and I'm doing the same thing with a feeder and feed. You know, you can, you know, they go in and with the availability of these shooting houses, you can architect them food plots, you know, and you can get your wind right and, you know, and set that shadow hunter or box blind out there or ground blind or whatever it may be in a position where, you know, you don't have to have a tree. You don't have to have any back cover. Mm-hmm. You know, it's right there. You just pick it up and set it there, anchor it down. You're ready to go. Yeah. And, you know, I've got, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 of them things on 6x10 trailers. Huh. And I mean, the deer I was telling you about, the 100 I was just talking about with the drop tine, 183 inch deer or whatever he was, that blind sits on a 6x10 trailer in the middle of a cattle pasture. I guarantee you, Google Earth.
Wide open?
Wide open. There ain't a tree within 60 yards of it.
Wow.
That is so not like Illinois.
I know. It's just, that's what's cool is it's so different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, every state. But, you know, in Illinois, you probably couldn't do that. But I don't know if you could or not. You know, of course, you guys can't feed over there. I mean, you can't even put salt.
But I've had deer come by in tree stands that I've been in, and I've got where I sit at my dad's a lot. I can see several other stands while I'm in one, and they'll look up at the stands.
Yeah, but that's how that's what's been trying. That's what they've been trying. People have been trying to kill them out of tree stands for 100 years.
Yeah. So what, with you being out in the middle of that pasture and that big, as you call, shadow hunter, are you busting deer off every night when you're leaving it?
No, not most of my deer. What they do if they come into that, you know, if they come into a feeder, you know, and eat, and then they're moving on off and going to the, you know, Kansas deer are walkers. You know, I mean, they'll take off, you know, at night they may go, you know, a couple miles in the dark, you know, down, you know, a creek bottom or whatever to eat corn or beans or alfalfa or whatever's there, Milo, you know. And I mean, a deer, you know, they're just a goat with horns. They're a browser, you know, they're only going to eat a little bit of corn and they're going to move off, you know. So they, you know, they just, you know, they don't stand there and eat that corn for, you know, I think people get the misconception that deer, you know, they come into a corn pile and they're going to eat 25 pounds. You know, they're just not even going to be able to walk when they leave there. And most of the bucks that you like, that buck there, and I've killed a lot of them, they very seldom will even eat. You know, they just may come in and scent check and
more of a social thing.
Pardon?
More of a social type thing.
Yeah. You know, it's like, and when it gets a little later in October, you know, there's a lot of does that come in there and stuff. And, you know, I mean, of course, our deer density is not like it is in, say, Illinois or maybe Missouri or, you know, other places. So you don't have, you know, 25 deer standing around a feeder eating. I mean, if I see, you know, like if you listen to a lot of my deer stories when I kill a big one, I hadn't seen a deer. I hadn't seen a deer. You know? Yeah. And I really think that, you know, I don't know if that's, you know, a lot of people, it's like what I used to be, you know, like if I hadn't seen anything, I'm like, I'd be mad. Now I'm like, if I hadn't seen anything, I'm like, damn, maybe I'll kill him tonight because I haven't seen anything.
You just got to pay your dues. That's what it is. It's part of hunting.
Yeah. But, you know, you might have you know, like a good evening out there, you know, you may see a half a dozen deer, maybe 10, you know. A lot of evenings you won't see none. 1, 2, you know. But it's not that 25 or, you know, I hunted Illinois, you know, I mean, me and Matt was talking about this the other day. You didn't even count deer. I mean, it was just crazy. I don't know if it's like that now. This was
No, it's not at all.
Yeah.
Nowhere.
No,
around it.
everyone listening, go to Hunt, Kansas.
No, everybody wants entertainment. See, that's what happens. See, Kansas, everybody comes out there and they lease 300 acres and they think it's Illinois. And they hang 4 or 5 stands, and then they sit there for a month, and they don't see a deer. And they're like, "Screw this! I'm going back to Illinois or Ohio or Iowa." Iowa. I don't know how Iowa has all these big deer because if you're going to have big deer, you got to kill all your does. So I don't know how Iowa does it because you'll see 100.
Well, back up and explain that statement there. I'm curious. What do you mean you got to kill all the does?
Well, I mean, in Missouri and a lot of states, they promote that killing all your, they promote that, kill does, kill does, kill does, kill does.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not a proponent of that at all. I think that's, and I think you got to keep the herd under control. But, I've never, and another thing that really gets me about it, where this is supposed to be about a big buck killing thing, but I'll put my deer management 2 cents in here. I've never understood why they promoted killing mature does. I never understood that. Why don't they promote killing doe fawns? I mean, if you're raising a herd of cattle, you don't go out and kill all your 6-year-old cows and have a whole bunch of heifers backing them up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
True.
What's going to raise a better baby? A 6-year-old mama doe or a 1.5-year-old doe that's having her first fawn?
Yeah, and you're probably going to get twins versus a single.
Exactly, and that's why they do it, because they want deer numbers down. But that's what if you're gonna, I just think that the majority of them big bucks that are really good, and I think sometimes it's it's just the breeding and stuff, and they say the doe is more important in it than anything. So if you have a farm that has a lot of big deer on it, and you're shooting all your does off of it, and supposedly, according to this high fence thing, the way they breed deer, that your doe is 75 or 80% of the genetic thing, and you're killing all your does every year. Well, you might be, it'd be like killing. I mean, it's worse than going out and shooting all your great big 3-year-olds, to me, or just as bad.
Interesting.
But anyway.
Hey, I read an article today. It's along this line of management for big deer. It was specifically about Missouri because they've implemented, or they're they're debating a point rule.
Yeah. Well, we had that at one time. Then they took it out, and then they put it back, and then we got CWD, and they took it off. Then, and that.
And so the idea there is an age class structure. You're trying to develop an upper age, right?
Yeah. That's the whole thing. They try to get them, they try to get them past 2.5 is what they're trying to do, I guess, or get them to 2.5.
Yeah.
Which most don't make it that long.
No, the average, I think. Well, I read an article one time that if you take Missouri and Kansas, geographically north to south, we're kind of the same. I think Missouri probably actually has better habitat than Kansas does, because Kansas is a lot of open ground and stuff. Definitely better carrying capacity. And this was from the QDMA, is where it was at. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but they said that I think it was 75% of the bucks killed in Kansas were 4.5 years old and older. I think this was rifle season. 75% of the bucks killed in Missouri was 2.5, either 2.5 or 3.5 years old and younger.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. I mean, if you don't put them deer into that 5-year-old age group, you're never going to have a lot of big ones. You're just not. I don't care what you do, care where you are. If they don't get to 5.5, I mean, all the people that consistently kill big deer, the best places, try to get Lee Lukoski to shoot a 4-year-old. He'd shoot his kid before he'd shoot a 4-year-old. I guarantee if you'd like Lee said, you got to shoot your kid, or you got to shoot this 4-year-old that's 190. I don't know, can I shoot my kid in the leg?
Oh, man. Well, Ralph, when we were talking, over the phone in preps for this, you were talking about some of your strategies that you put in place for chasing specifically nocturnal bucks. And so I kind of wanted to kind of just specifically talk about the tactics you use to do that.
Well, like I said before, I think all deer are nocturnal, and definitely the older age class deer. If you're hunting, 5.5-year-old deer and older, you're definitely dealing with a nocturnal animal. That being said, some are slightly crazier than others. So some of them are, but all of them are, basically nocturnal. That's kind of their job, is to move at night, or right at the last light and all this stuff. But what I've kind of found is, that like I say, the worst thing about hunting big deer is not hunting very much. I don't hunt very much. I let my and I know some guys don't believe in, you can, you put them trail cameras in where them deer are, and you spook them checking them and stuff. And I'm like, I don't believe that. I think you I think when a deer walks up to, say, your trail camera or a feeder or whatever, I think when he walks in there at 8 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock, whatever time it is, 45 minutes after dark, he definitely knows you've been there. I mean, their nose is way too good for that, but I think he can definitely go, that guy's sitting in a tree. That guy was here 6 hours ago. So I don't think, I check my cameras all the time, and because I don't have, a lot of Kansas don't have cell service, and I got enough money invested in cameras now. I don't want to go buy Reconexes that are cell cameras that are $900, $1,200 or whatever they are. But so what I do is pattern them deer with cameras, check them real often, because I got buddy. I don't check my cameras every 2 weeks. I'm like, what the hell good does that do you? It's over by the time you checked it. But so I check them a lot. I mean, I go, if I'm on a big deer on a spot, I will go there at least every 3 days. And I mean,
are you checking in the middle of the day?
Every 3 days?
Yeah, every 3 or 4 days I'll check them.
How often do you check yours, Colton?
I don't do it. I do it at the same time. I mean, them deer, everybody, and they're not that way, or they'd all be gone. They'd all be dead from running like a maniac from you can, and I don't know, my buddy Davey says you can, he said, you're conditioning them deer. I said, well, I don't know what I'm doing to them, but I'm killing them. But,
well said. Conditioning.
He says you're conditioning them deer to you. And I think he's right almost. I mean, I go up to them feeders. I'm not kidding you. I go up there, and deer, when they eat out of a free choice feeder, they slobber in there, and it gets a bunch of gunk built up, and you have to break that out of there with your hand and stuff. I mean, there's no other way to do it. I'm, filling them feeders. I'm backing a Ranger in there. A lot of times I got my 120-pound dog, and he's over pissing on my camera post. And, and you check them, and at 45 minutes after dark, that deer's standing there eating now, that out of that hole of that feeder that you just had your hand in at noon. Now, you can't tell me that he's that scared of you that you have to wear rubber gloves and spray your camera, and you can't check it but once a week. You can't tell me he's that scared, or he wouldn't be in there eating. They're just not. It's just all about that they're only going to move so many times. If you mess with them where they sleep, if you mess with them in their bed, you can jack them up then. I firmly believe that. You may not run them completely out of the country, but they'll move or something. You mess with them enough. I think that's why, like them bedding areas, you can probably only hunt them during the rut, But where they're going to, I mean, all this ground, them, and a deer doesn't, he doesn't know that you're a deer hunter. He doesn't know what a bow is. He doesn't know what a gun is. He doesn't know what any of that stuff is. He can't go through a Cabela's catalog and pick out stuff.
I wonder why I'm not killing big deer up there.
They don't have that thought process. So there's no difference between Joe Carpenter checking his cows my landowner, or or Barb going in there and checking cattle or working calves and stuff than it is me going in there and hunting or going in there and feeding. Now, if you go in there, that's why I say the hunting thing, the worst thing you can do to a deer, I think, is hunting on bad days or mediocre days, because then you're messing with him in his time, 2 hours before dark. He's getting up, he's moving. At noon, he's laying over there. I can't. I can't say this. He's laying over there licking his foot, and chewing his cud in the middle of the day, and he hears a Reynolds drive in there.
And he watches you, but that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, he watches you.
Well, last year, didn't you get real close to a couple of big bucks, Jeff?
Oh, you walk right by them. They're just laying there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But if you go over there and booger him up where he's sleeping, if you, like them deer say I'm hunting, they're bedded in a couple draws, especially that one place, there's 2 draws there, and they either bed kind of to the north or to the north and east of there. Now, if I went over and walked through that draw every day, they'd be gone. They ain't going to do that. They're not going to tolerate that if I go in there and jump them out of their bed. But if I go in there and hunt that spot 15 days in a row, every time the wind blows out of the north or east, or, I can hunt it with a north or a northwest or a dead west or a dead east. If I go in there and hunt it every time that I can hunt it because the wind is right, just because the wind is right doesn't mean it's time to hunt your stand. I don't think. You got to get in there and you got to get out of there. And it's very hard to get in and out of them spots, even with excellent entrance and exit, that unless you're doing I keep bringing up the Drury boys because I really think that they really do it right. Unless you're planting CRP and mowing paths and walking through standing corn or something like that, most people don't have that option. You're hunting deer a little more, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it's, you don't have the availability and the means to do what a lot of them guys can do on them big farms, and stuff. And when you own it, you can do all that. I'm leasing ground, so I can't go in there and, hey Joe, I'm gonna bulldoze me a path up this hillside, or something like that, So what I do is I wait for them perfect days, north wind, high pressure, bluebird day. And if you leave that deer alone, even though I'm going in there and feeding, so I've got good history. I know when he's getting on his feet, I'm getting pictures of him an hour after dark, consistently. I'm getting pictures of him in the morning 3 or 4 times a week in the daylight, maybe more, So I know he's bedding right there. When I get in that shooting house or stand, I know that deer's bedded 200 yards from me. And if you
you're saying you don't hunt cloudy days?
No. Well, if it was high, how many days are high pressure that are cloudy?
Yeah. Not very many.
Not many. And that's what I think that's what I say. So I always say, I said, the worst thing about hunting big deer is not hunting.
Discipline.
You got to wait for the perfect days. And you may only get, like my buddy Davey, he gives me heck all the time. He goes, how many days have you hunted in the last, I don't know, I don't know if I've killed 5 or 6 or something in the last 3 years that are over 170 or something, a couple of real big ones and stuff. But anyway, I've killed quite a few, and like I've only hunted, just a couple more days than what I've killed. Huh. And it's not that I'm a great hunter. By any means.
I don't know about that.
We would disagree on
no, there's guys that are, there's guys that are 10 times, probably as far as, like if I had to put a stand on my back and walk into a hardwoods ridge and, and find a place to hang and to kill a deer. And so I don't know if I could do that. I used to could when I was a kid, but, I haven't done that in so long. My skills as far as that end of it are not nearly as good as they used to be. But you give me a big one coming to a place and eating, and I can work on him. And how you work on him is not hunting. I think by not hunting. Now, you'll probably get guys that'll call into your podcast or whatever and say that, that guy's freaking crazy. He don't know what he's talking about.
We'll just send them your email.
Yeah, send them but like Mark and them guys, well, they've got to hunt because but they're not. I don't think whenever Mark finds a really, really big one that he's after, I don't think he's hunting that deer 25 days. I just don't. I mean,
So
I think he's hunting.
would you describe your style of hunting as, I guess, not aggressive? So I'd hate to use the word passive, but is that kind of what you try to do?
I don't know. I guess maybe you would call it. I'm a passive hunter and an aggressive camera, feeder, all the other stuff.
Weather and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm curious here. Colton is sitting here. Colton got a really nice buck last year.
Several.
And I remember the story. This is the one you snuck in and checked your cameras in the rain. How many days did you actually hunt that buck?
That was my fourth hunt for him. And I had moved the stand each time. And I think just kind of what he was talking about with like the cameras, I've kind of noticed over the years, like if you sit there and wait a week, it's like you go in and then all of a sudden there was that mature buck. He was there 3 days in a row. And then all of a sudden he's gone. And it's like with mature deer, you've got very limited opportunities and you have to take advantage of it. And it's like, okay, if I'd have been going in there at noon and checking cameras, if I'd have caught him on the second day, I could have snuck in that next day and maybe got a crack at him. But with that buck I had shot, it was on a really small piece of property, and I didn't really have any other deer to go after, so I just loaded up this place with cameras, and I had an Excel document, and I was writing which way he was walking every time. I'd really kind of just was like, okay, I'm going to try to get this deer, and kind of figured out where he was bedded, and just tried to move closer to where I thought he was bedded every time, and I actually ended up getting pretty close. And
like how close?
Yeah, that's the right way to do it.
I was probably 70 yards. So when I shot him, it was a liver shot, and we didn't go look for him for about 14 hours.
Because dead deer don't move.
Yeah, dead deer. And I found him laying in a bed where I thought he was bedded, and it was 70 yards from where I'd climbed.
Goodness.
So,
wow.
But it was it was October 16th, and it was super foliage, and I mean I couldn't see 50 yards from where I was sitting.
That's dog days. I mean that deer shouldn't be, according to what everybody says, you should only kill time of year.
I've killed 3 of the deer on my wall. I've killed from October 14th to 17th.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't know if it's just luck.
Yeah, there's and all and I'm just and it's you're kind of at the mercy of the weather, but I've lived 5.5 hours from where I hunt, and I'll watch the weather, and if I'm on a big one, if I get a big one coming in somewhere, and I know what he's doing and everything. I mean, if I catch a cold front with high pressure and a north wind, if he's in that spot, I'll drive out there just to hunt. One day.
See, I don't know if I'm at that point yet.
Not gonna be any good, but if you do that, I mean, them days are so productive. I mean, it's unbelievable if you just wait them deer out. I think what happens is whenever people hunt them too much, you don't run the deer off, but you just give him just enough, that he walked through there and he smelt your track and instead of him going, damn, that wasn't at noon, that was just a little while ago. That's pretty fresh. Mm-hmm. And I do think I don't know if they have a concept of time or something, but they have a definitely, they're not that scared of human odor. I think it's the amount of odor molecules or whatever the hell it is that's in the air or however that works that they can differentiate how long it's been. I think they have an amount that they will tolerate.
Ron, do you think Dio is that way? Do you think Dio can tell his bloodhound? Can he tell how old a track is or those kind of things?
I think so. I mean, because just by his mannerisms and his pace, a wounded deer puts off a particular scent. That's going to dissipate after time. So if it's been more of a distance on the census shot and we're tracking, he's going to be slower on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he can differentiate.
And a deer's
He'll know.
going to be the same way. That makes sense. I haven't thought
I mean,
about
my
that.
dad, when I was a kid growing up, my dad was a big coon hunter. And I remember, going with him, and them dogs would open up on a track, and they would just fool around and fool around and fool around and fool around, and they'd move it a little bit and fool it around. Then all of a sudden, that track would get hot, and they'd open up on him.
Yep.
And that was just, they was just working that cold track trying to get it lined out, and I don't know, Ron, can a deer smell better than a dog?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I'd have to Google that and find out. I guess I really don't know.
I think I've read that they actually have. No, I mean I think there's definitely different levels of dog noses.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Sure. I don't think a Chihuahua has got the nose that a bloodhound's got,
No.
or something. But
So then,
but
Ron, how you track?
I read that they can smell. I know as good, if not better, than a dog.
Yeah.
I know a way a guy explained it to me that if a deer, like if you walk in your house, if somebody walks in your house, they smell something that's cooking good. A deer walks in your house, he smells peas, carrots, potatoes, steak.
Yep.
Bread,
And
every
a dog,
individual thing.
dog does it the same way. It'll smell in layers like that.
So here you go. Here you go,
Did
guys.
you Google it?
Information. Google.
It's got to be right.
Here we go. Yeah, it's got to be right. Right. Deer have 7 glands used primarily for scent communication. The nose of a white-tailed deer has up to 297 million all olfactory receptors. So 297 million. Dogs have 220 million.
Oh, so he can smell just a little better, I guess.
Yeah, Ron and I, we've only got 5 million apiece.
Yeah.
So Ron, you do hundreds of tracks a year plus. Going back to some of that date of tracking mature deer, would you say that a lot of your tracks for mature deer are middle of October, end of October, into November? What do you see?
I'd have to go back and look at the records, but just off the top of my head, it's rut is when I'm the busiest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's just because
More
everybody
hunters.
hunts the rut.
Say
you
more
know?
hunters.
Yeah, everybody
Yeah.
hunts the rut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I mean, then, I mean, if you're not trying to kill a particular deer, I mean, the rut, there's no, I mean, you can set till your butt falls off in a funnel the 15th of October. But, if you set in them funnels, the first 10 days of November, especially in Illinois, I mean, when me and Matt was talking about that, I mean, I used to have a little place over a couple hundred acres I hunted over, and it was one of them deals like, if you get in them funnels and keep the wind right, if I had a week to hunt, I was almost guaranteed that I was going to get a chance to kill at least 150-inch deer, every year, and maybe 2, I mean, when I hunted, there was a few years in Illinois that, they used to have like unlimited deer tags and stuff, it was crazy. But I think you could always kill 2 when I was hunting over there, but a couple years I did, but most years it was just 1, or kill 1 with a bow and 1 with a shotgun. But yeah, that deer is just, during the rut, the deer, like I tell my hunters, the deer you kill during November, during the rut, when you get in your tree stand, he could be 2 miles from you.
Yeah.
Especially if you're hunting along a river or a creek bottom or something, and, I mean, I've seen them deer out there, even in Kansas, in that open country. I mean, they're just going, walk, scent checking draws, just running the ends of them draws, just scent checking them, with their, middle of the day, wherever, whatever, I mean, your deer, they get all scattered around and stuff. Now, I think whenever them deer do get older, I've kind of noticed, like with, them deer that I've killed that's been in that 6 and 7 and 8 year old age class, that I think they're that old. I mean, I don't, I wasn't there when they was born. Like, some people, it's like, I see these guys, it's like, they got a 120-inch deer, and it's like, well, he was 7. I'm like, who the hell keeps track of a 120-inch deer for 7 years?
Somebody who lives in Michigan, probably.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, you estimate, that you think, well, when he's 3.5, he was this, and then from then on. But some of them deer, their home range gets very small, and they don't do a lot during the rut. I see a lot of them deer, they won't be gone on them big sabbaticals, where they, lock down, where you don't see them for 10 days. They might be gone for a day or 2, but then they're back, You know, and the older they get, it seems like the more they're like that. You know, they tend to rely more on that core area that they know. You know, and I don't know if they just, you know, they're dominant in that area. There's enough does for them. Their urge to breed is probably not.
They figured out their safety zone is what I think.
Yeah.
They know where they're safe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they get comfortable in their little area, you know, and I think, you know, and some of them big deer too, when they get, you know, or older deer, when they get like that, it almost seems like they almost let their guard down a little bit every once in a while. You know, they ain't quite as fickle, you know, about things, you know.
When we talked to Chris Lenauer, that's what he said too.
Mm-hmm.
I've
heard that a few
big
times.
ones, they're actually more mobile, more active, more visible, the bigger and older they get.
Yeah. Well, you know, Matt, we talked about the deer that my hunter killed that, you know, was like in the 260s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that deer, and he blew up one year. I mean, he was big that deer was like 7 or 8 years old. And it was kind of a weird deal, him getting that big. I don't know what the deal was with him. But it was just one of them genetic
Probably
freak
eating
things.
25 pounds of corn.
Yeah, I don't know. I must have been
It's a
feeding him
steroid you're putting on your corn.
For real. Well,
But,
Ralph, hey, we're running out of time on the podcast, but what I want to do to end our time, Ron does this all the time on his Bloodhound page. What is one thing that you want to leave with the hunters that are listening to this podcast?
I don't know. Hunting big deer sucks 99% of the time. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you want to kill big deer, you know, and not just old deer, big deer, you know, I mean, you know, everybody's like, oh, well, it doesn't matter if they're 6 years old as long, you know, what they score. Well, yeah, it does. I mean, to me, it does. I mean,
Everybody who says that hasn't taken a big one. That's the deal.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if that sounds bad or not, but I wouldn't walk across the street to shoot 160 or a 6.5-year-old 140-inch deer. I mean, I have no desire to do that.
I would. Give me a call.
So what I'm saying, you know,
Drive to Kansas.
so if you want to commit to killing big deer and killing them consistently, I think the biggest thing you have to do is it's probably like in everything else, you have to be very, very patient. And, you know, and check all your boxes, your scent and all that and everything. But I think that trail camera is a really, really good tool. And, you know, and don't be scared to go in there and check them cameras. I mean, I know some guys will probably tell me I'm freaking crazy that, you know, but I don't know. You can walk in my deer room in my house and I can show you a pile of them.
Yeah.
That died that method. You know, so maybe I get lucky and find all the dumb ones.
Proof's in the pudding.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, thanks for being on the podcast. And well, I know you only take a certain amount of hunters over at Prairie Land, but how can someone get a hold of you if they'd like to?
Well, actually, I have a Facebook page. I get notifications that I haven't updated it all the time, but it's my outfitting thing it's Kansas Prairie Land Outfitters is what the name of it is, and my phone numbers on there are Ralph Reynolds. I have a personal Facebook page, and my phone number's on there. You can call me or text me or whatever, and then I think I have my email address on there too. And yeah, I keep it pretty limited in most of my, but you know, I have an occasional opening here and there. And I, you know, take a lot of turkey hunters in the spring. The turkey hunting's really good out there. So if anybody, that's kind of a big thing for me is the turkey hunting, you know, in the spring.
What's the seasons there?
I think in Kansas, it kind of varies. It starts the 1st of April, but usually their shotgun season opens like the second Wednesday of April. They have youth, an archery, and a handicap season first. I think the youth and handicap is first, or assisted hunter, and then they have an archery season for like 4 or 5 days or 6 or something, and then it all opens up, you know, as far as general shotgun and everything, as far as turkey. And it runs till the last day of May. Which
Try that someday.
Yeah.
We have a lot of turkeys, and and you can feed in Kansas, so them turkeys like corn too.
Ralph, been good talking to you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I
Appreciate
enjoy talking to you too. If I ever shoot a big one, Ron, and I can't find him, I'm calling you.
Awesome. I'll be there, man. Sounds good.
If I call you, you'll know it'll be a big one. It won't be 140 inches.
All right.
All right.
All right, man.
Good
Have a
luck.
good one. Thanks.
Thank you,
All right.
Ralph.
All right, see ya.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. See you.
Well, man, that was such an incredible podcast with Ralph Reynolds. Ralph, thanks for your time joining us on the podcast today. One of the things that I took away from this podcast was the word persistency. Ralph just puts in the time at the right time, and it's a big deal. I hope you learned a lot from this podcast. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a review wherever you listen to this podcast. Again, it helps people find it faster and quicker, and we can't wait to see you on the next podcast.